Hello world, and welcome back to the Dweebatron channel. In episode 8, we will mostly be talking about the things that I've sold, but in doing so, we will touch on Morgantown's golf ball pattern and Fostoria's American pattern. So let's see what sold. These Rochester root beer mugs sold this week for $33.75. People collect anything that has to do with pop or soda. This Fenton bowl sold for $28.25. This is a pattern called Leaf Tears, which was first introduced in 1914. It was reissued in the 1970s. If your piece is unmarked, it is an older piece. Fenton started using this mark with their logo in an oval in the 1970s. In the 1980s, they added an 8 under the logo like this. In the 90s, they made it a 9, then a 0, then a 1, and then sadly, after over 100 years of glass production, they went out of business. If you find a maker's sticker on a piece of glass, as with the Fenton sticker that you see on this piece, having that sticker on there will boost the value of the piece in most cases. I heard a story about a glass collector who hosted a get-together with some friends in his basement. One of his guests went upstairs to use the restroom. When she didn't come back right away, the host went to check on her and found her dutifully removing all of the maker's stickers from his glass collection. If you see a maker's sticker on a piece of glassware, please don't take it off, and don't stick your price tag on it either. Please? Thanks. This pretty little piece was made by Cooperative Flint Glass Company in the 1880s and was called their floral pattern. I sold this butter dish base for $25. Remember the Viking pattern from last week's discussion? This ruffled blue compote was made by Viking Glass Company. It sold for $28.75. I'm highlighting this pattern in this episode, Morgantown's golf ball pattern, because it is one well worth remembering. I learned this pattern early on from one of my books, and it occasionally shows up and always turns a profit. You can see that in this case I paid $4.20 for these 4 goblets and sold them for $99. I actually found 5 of these, but packaging 4 items in a box is easy. Packaging 5 items in a box, not so much. So I sold this lot of 4 and then listed my leftover goblet after the first 4 sold. It isn't hard to see why they named this pattern golf ball, but despite the somewhat silly name, the quality of the glass is excellent. The golf ball pattern can be found in a number of different shapes and colors, and all of them are collected, so watch for it. This Crown Distillery's whiskey bottle sold. I was given this 1880s bottle as part of a trade over 30 years ago. I only recently discovered that it was a clever marriage of 2 broken bottles, expertly put together. I disclosed this fact in the listing, and it still brought $21.62. The other pattern I want to highlight is Fostoria's American pattern. American was introduced by Fostoria in 1915 and was produced clear into the 1980s. There were literally hundreds of different pieces made in this pattern, and several companies copied it with similar patterns. Occasionally a colored piece will turn up, but those are very rare. I've only found one colored piece, a tiny little amber bowl that I bought for 99 cents and sold for over $100. This covered candy box had a bit of damage, but I still sold it for $23.75. American sells so well that whenever I see a piece for a good price, I will usually buy it, unless I know it is a really common piece. Even the common pieces will still sell, and the rarer pieces can bring a nice price. Keep your eyes out for this pattern and you will start seeing it everywhere. This little Fenton vase sold for $17.85. Many of Fenton's hand-painted items are signed on the base by the artist. Some of the artists are very popular, and Susan Bryan is one of those popular artists. I sold this 1976 Ken doll for $9.95. The now look was a phrase from the 70s that was equivalent to saying the modern look or the hip look. So even though this is known as the now look Ken, I prefer to call it the now look, Ken. This 1949 Kinnikinnick yearbook sold for $7.50. We've talked about yearbooks before. They are always a good bet. And finally, the almost obligatory can openers. These 2 Blatz beer can openers sold for $5.81. That concludes this episode. Thanks so much for watching. Click subscribe to get more info on old stuff selling on eBay. And until next time, remember to take good care of each other. And I'll see you then.